Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour Saga 960. I've got a returning guest tonight, Diane Francis, a columnist with the National Post. And last time we chatted, she was urging everyone to take some pretty strenuous measures in lockdown. She was quoting a bunch of the things that happened in South Korea. And now she's arguing that we should open up. And I think at the same time, ensuring that people that are vulnerable be isolated. But Diane, how do you reconcile these two very strong and popular, well-read columns that you wrote, and why the change, or is it a change?
No, it isn't a change. I mean, the first column was written when the crisis was first started. The second column was written 6 or 8 weeks later when we had the statistics as to the victims and the demographics of the people that are afflicted with this problem. And so the second one was really basically saying, we didn't really need to lock down anybody who wasn't 65 years of age or older, or with preconditions such as diabetes, cancer, heart disease, those kinds of things. And those are the people that have fallen victim to the disease. And so the argument was that you can't shut down the entire economy indefinitely until the very last case is finished, because you're going to ruin everything for no reason at all. And what should continue onward is a self-isolation of people over 65 until such time as we have a test that shows in a conclusive way that they are safe to go out socially and work again. This would allow the economy to open up very fully and with some confidence. Right now, the economies are opening up, but I'm not sure the confidence level is there, certainly in the United States and certain regions where they're just letting it open.
Well, you certainly hear lots of negative comments, and frankly, on both sides of the issue. The response or retort to some of the arguments that you made is that there's something like 103 people that are young children that have got something like Kawasaki disease. And so therefore questions about whether it's appropriate to open up schools and whether kids really are not getting this. And then lots of other comments about people in their 30s and 40s that are having challenges. But then on the other side, you're quite correct. Rand Paul in front of the Senate arguing that almost no one other than the elderly and people with pre-existing conditions was being impacted. And so therefore open up everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think we learned a little bit more about the disease than we did before. I mean, the way it looked before, it was like the bloody plague, and anybody could get it who came in contact with anybody who had it or was carrying it. That's not the case. People that are healthy and young, they can come into contact with people that are carrying it or who have it, and they don't succumb. And they may catch it, but it'll pass through them. So, it was really based on an economic policy that lockdown, yes, for health reasons, for public health reasons, but a targeted lockdown based on the data that's come out of the fact that we now know that people over 65 are the only ones that are really in danger.
Seems like the people most in danger are those in seniors' homes.
Well, that's even worse, because then you've got people over 75 who have even less of an immune system. Also, people have to understand, nursing homes are not retirement homes. Nursing homes are hospital for old, sick people. So by definition, these are very weak human beings. They're in a nursing home, skilled nursing home with doctors and nurses. They're being looked after in a nursing home as opposed to just living in a retirement community. And of course, they're congregated to eat together and that sort of thing, which generates spreading. And so the nursing home thing is not surprising, considering how contagious it is, and the fact that it exactly proves my point that the disease in people over 75 is alarmingly high.
Yeah.
Because they're older and weak, and pretty much everybody over 75 probably has one of these preconditions. And then you add to that, they're all corralled together in a nursing home where a lot of other people are very sick and would be spreading it. So that's the problem with the nursing homes. They should have been, now I think going forward, nursing homes will have to be designed and operated very differently than they are now. But, shutting down the entire economy because the common cold is spreading would be insane. And what I'm saying is, and what was pretty obvious from the data, not at the beginning, And this is not about liberty or freedom of movement and all that nonsense. Public health concern dictates that it's a targeted, continuing lockdown until there is a vaccine.
But the targeted is of people over the age of 65.
Over the age of 65, unless they can demonstrate that they have the antibodies.
We're chatting tonight with Diane Francis, columnist with the National Post. We're going to take a quick break for messages. Stay with us, and we're going to have more with Diane Francis in just a minute. Well, welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're chatting tonight with Diane Francis, one of my favorite columnists. She's always provocative and really quite interesting to read. She's now arguing that we should open up the economy, and that I guess the health of the economy is paramount. But yet at the same time, isolate people, quarantine people that are above 65, have pre-existing conditions, are vulnerable. Diane, what do you think about masks? Should we be telling everyone they have to wear masks?
Absolutely, everybody should wear a mask. Anybody who doesn't is being ridiculous. Look, I go out, when I leave my apartment, I'm self-isolated, I have a mask. And that's not because I have a problem. It's not because I'm going to give it to somebody. That's why, President Trump is moronic when he says, well, I've tested okay, I can't give it to anybody. That's not the point. Other people can give it to you, or you can accidentally, and the test every day might differ, you might accidentally suddenly have it and then spread it. So I think it's a matter of courtesy. I think it's a matter of respect for other people to wear a mask. If you're not wearing a mask on the street, you're not respecting other people. That's the way I see it.
I read this one article, don't know if it's right, but that said that masks are 60% effective. And if you had 60% of the people wear masks, that the virus wouldn't be able to be transferred within 2 weeks and it would be gone.
Well, which 60%? And who knows they have it and who knows they're transmitting it? The point is everybody should wear a mask. And that's just the way it is until there's a vaccine. Once everybody is inoculated or has an antibody firewall protection of some kind, then I think just as a matter of courtesy, people should be masked.
I interviewed a doctor, a clinical researcher from Mount Sinai last week, and he was suggesting that the problem with seniors' homes was not necessarily the residents, but the nurses and the attendees, and that they would get infected. They wouldn't show symptoms. They came and they transferred it from room to room to room. And so his solution is the only people we should be allowing to be health workers in these seniors' homes and or nursing homes is people that have, assuming there's no vaccine, people that have had the infection, have recovered, and carry the antibodies. And in that regard, he's recommending a clinical test where people will volunteer to get infected.
Yeah, I don't know about that idea, but I think that we have to have healthcare workers. If we banned everybody who didn't have a clinical test showing that they'd had it and beaten it, I think we'd have a crisis. We'd have an even worse crisis healthcare wise. No, you have to have people coming and going, but you can't have people going in to a healthcare facility. I don't care whether it's a food service worker, the janitor, a valet parker, whatever it is, or guest or loved one who has not been tested to make sure that they're not carrying it. They can't be allowed in. They started to lock down the nursing homes very soon, but some did a better job than others.
Last time we chatted, you suggested that there was a great opportunity to use technology to track who was infected, whether people were honoring isolations, things like that. You referenced some of the technology and the apps from South Korea, et cetera. Do you think that's still an opportunity we should be looking intensely at?
Yeah, that's what the Americans are looking at and others are looking at as well. I think that's a privacy problem. I don't see it as a privacy problem. I don't think you have a right to give me a disease that'll kill me. And so therefore, I think you unless you can demonstrate you do not have that disease at any given time that will kill me, then I think you have to surrender your cell phone information so that people know where you are and who you've come in contact with, so that you, unbeknownst to you, will find out that, oh my gosh, I was in a restaurant where there were 5 people that tested positive. Uh-oh, I better go get tested. Or uh-oh, whatever action they take. And that's how it works. And, it spreads like wildfire.
Yeah.
And so you have to have tracing. And that's what the Taiwanese and the South Koreans, Singaporeans, and I assume the Chinese have done better than anybody else. And, Taiwan and South Korea are rule of law democratic countries. And somehow they've gotten around this problem. But, people do not have a right to make other people sick or die.
So what do you think about these protesters that we see almost nightly on the news in the United States that are making this all a freedom, liberty issue? And frankly, the Supreme Court in Wisconsin that disallowed stay-at-home orders.
Well, the Americans politicize everything. I mean, how can you politicize a virus? A virus is not blue or red. It's ridiculous. That's all that is. That's a lot of election stuff. I mean, it's a zany country. There's no other way to put it. It's the country I was born in, and I'm still an American citizen as well as a Canadian, but it's a zany place. And it's gotten zanier as time goes on. So, what Trump is doing is he has fostered these kinds of protests with his tweets. He has fostered the rebellion against, any controls over people's behavior in the name of freedom and liberty. He runs around without a mask on, which is very reckless. And at the same time, secretly has been taking a prescription pill that he hasn't been prescribed to take. I mean, he's a lawless character, let's face it. And I just think that's political circus. I don't take any note of that. And it certainly isn't grassroots, and it certainly isn't large. So what we're going to see in the US is what we always see in the US. The US is not like Canada. Canada was a colony. It still is a colony. It still is compliant. It still is patriarchal. We still accede to our governments because we trust them. Down there, it's survival of the fittest, and everybody does their own thing. And that's what we're seeing. So we're seeing hotspots grow up in states that never locked down, of course. And we'll see those hotspots reemerge in states that have opened up and not locked down or extended or never locked down. And we're going to see those things happening. Or you see sporadic clampdowns, like in Florida. It's kind of interesting to note that in the northern part of Florida, where they never locked down, the incidence of the disease is very minimal. In the southern part of Florida, where you have a lot of elderly people and, most importantly, international traffic in and out, that's how the virus spread, through international travelers. They had a clampdown, and they've been able to do a pretty good job. So it's regional, and I think it has to be locally disciplined.
It's not just international travel. I've heard numerous reports of people exiting Manhattan, New York, going down to winter houses, winter places they had in Palm Springs, Boca Raton, Miami, etc. And they were the people that brought the disease, brought the infection.
Yeah, but the virus got on the airplane in Wuhan. The virus traveled to Italy. Then the virus went from Italy on an airplane to New York. And New York is the epicenter because it has more international travel than any other part of the United States by a factor of 50. And so they had the epicenter first, and then there's nothing to preclude the virus going from getting on an airplane now from New York to Des Moines. And that's why we're seeing outbreaks.
So what do you think should have been done? Should we have had a more quick clampdown on travel? And, even I remember, when was it, a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, there was actually a thought for a little while of restricting travel outside of New York State.
I think everybody did what they thought was a good idea at the time. I mean, the casualties really got away from New York and the United States to a certain extent. The administration is anti-science and anti-logic actually down there. Here, maybe we reacted a little too quickly, except with the exception of Quebec, which has the worst outbreak of any part of the world right now. Montreal is an epicenter, 4 times higher than the Canadian average, Quebec. And so, it's very regional, it depends. I think people just did what they thought was a good idea at the time, and everybody did the best they could with the information they had. And, this is a virus that travels instantly. It's very rapid. And so it just overtook everything.
Now, you've been very critical in your columns of late in our conversations about President Donald Trump. But at the same time, you've been historically thought of as a commentator, columnist of the right. What do you think is going to happen in the coming election?
Well, I just want to explain something. Canadians don't understand the US. They think they do, but they don't. And they don't even understand Canada. I'm a conservative in Canada. which puts me to the left of the Democrats in the United States. The border makes a huge difference. So
so you think the Conservative Party in Canada is left of the Democratic Party in the States?
100%, because we like single payer healthcare systems. There's never been any move to disable or to get rid of that. And that's probably the major differentiation. We don't have any problem with abortion law. We don't have any problem with capital punishment law, gun controls, all of those things, all of those values that determine right, left in the two countries are very different. Canada is the Sweden of the Western Hemisphere. We are social democrats, ultra liberal socially, and that's the way we are. That's just the way the society is. Now, I am right of center in Canada because we have too much socialism. But down in the United States, I would be left of center because they don't have enough. Because they have 100 million people that are disenfranchised down there. They have a third world country inside that country that don't have access to economic opportunities, educational opportunities, healthcare. It's a mess. It's really a mess. Somehow it moves along and so on and so forth. So that's the difference. And I always get amused and somewhat irritated when the Liberals and the NDP like to call right of center people like me, oh, you're just like Trump. No, I'm not. I am not. I am left of the Democrats as a Canadian conservative.
That said, Donald Trump seems to be holding his base. So what do you think is going to happen in the United States in the upcoming election?
It's too early to tell. Too early. He's hung his his re-election on this, hope for a vaccine this fall. And we'll see. If that happens, he may get credited with being the guy who brought it about. Who knows? I don't know what he's very cunning. I'm not sure the Democrats are cunning. He's very ruthless and nasty, and the Democrats are not ruthless and nasty enough. So he already has the advantage being ruthless, nasty, and cunning, and the incumbent. So it's going to be a hard slog to get ahead, but a lot of people are very upset.
So let's turn to the economy.
So it's too early to call. It's too early to call. So we're near. I hope we're nearly done because I'm running out of time.
Okay, so let's turn to the economy. You're arguing that we should be reopening. Do you think if we reopen that we're going to be able to have a V-shaped recovery, or are you worried that it's going to be recession or depression?
It's not reopening or not reopening. It's not lockdown versus reopening. It is targeted lockdown to reopen partially. Otherwise, there's going to be outbreaks and problems unless people maintain, as they might in Canada, distancing and masking. That's a different story. We are a little more disciplined and a little more respectful of other people than they are down in the US. Also, our people are not desperate to work as they are in the US. You've got 100 million people down there that make no money at all and have to go to work every day. So they're going to go into a meatpacking plant no matter what the rules are. And they're going to do whatever they have to do to support themselves. So you've got a different society here. So I think that V, W, X, Y, I don't care. It depends on how you phase out of the lockdown. If it's targeted, as I'm suggesting, over 65, self-isolate, help them to do that if they need financial or other help them to do that. I think you can open up the whole thing very quickly.
What do you think of the Canadian federal government response from an economic standpoint so far? Are we giving enough money or not enough?
The provinces are in charge, thank God. The Prime Minister is very weak. I have no respect for him. He shouldn't be there. He's only there because of his surname. And he's the quartermaster. And all they're doing is handing out money. And that's okay.
Is it enough money?
Which we will all have to pay back.
Is it enough money?
Oh, we'll see. We'll see. I would think so.
And you say we have to pay it back. So what do you think we should be increasing taxes, increasing GST, or what?
That's a book. That's 10 books. 1,000 books have been written on that. So I'm out of time.
Thank you so much. Dan Francis, columnist of the National Post. Really appreciate it. Anytime you've got time and want to chat with me, I'd love to chat with you again.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.